Welcome back, Buccaneers fans, to another episode of Hear the Cannons presented by BucsGameday.com, Sports Illustrated's one and only website strictly dedicated to covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My name is Caleb at CHS Noel. I'm a writer and reporter here for Bucs Game Day. Along with me, as always, is our lead editor, River Wells, at River H. Wells on X. Thank you guys for tuning in. We've got a host of things to talk about. Obviously, the big one being what is happening at OTA since the last time we had an update. You guys were able to be in attendance for your second media attendance day there, starting here in week 2 yesterday on Tuesday. Tons to touch on there, some updates to give you guys there as well. But before we get going, if you guys are watching anywhere else other than YouTube, head over to YouTube. We'd love for you guys to get us to 50 likes on this stream, this live stream that we got going for you guys, what we're bringing to you guys, showing us the love, which is able to allow us to give back to you more, get picked up on the YouTube algorithm, and be able to get this information and updates and whatever it may be, entertainment to you guys as well through that. So try and get us to 50 likes. We would really, truly appreciate it on YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in. With that being said, excuse me, we're going to start with Baker Mayfield. We're going to dig into the OTA updates here a little bit later, guys, so stick with us here a little bit. But we're going to dive into Baker Mayfield. He's kind of been a hot topic of conversation, even though it's not been widely talked about outside or, through post-practice interviews or anything like that. But Baker Mayfield currently has the 8th best odds, according to DraftKings, for winning the NFL MVP award. Kind of high up there. We saw what the numbers he was able to put up last year. He's currently tied with CJ Stroud at plus 2,500. The guys above him, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, and then you get into the plus, really plus money over 1,000 there with Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and then Stroud and Baker as well. Your thoughts on that? You think Baker is warranted of such high of odds there to win the NFL MVP? And do you see him potentially being in the running there as the season progresses?
Well, NFL MVP kind of depends on a lot of different things, right? Your team has to be, I think, one of the best teams in football to be an MVP. When we saw last year, I would argue that last year the best quarterback in football, and thus usually the MVP, was Joe Burrow. And yet, with a terrible defense, that Bengals team missed the playoffs, and he was not in consideration. So the Bucs defense will have to tighten up to be able to supplement, the offensive firepower that we saw from last year. They're going to have to win a lot of games, and they're going to have to be one of the top dogs in the NFC for Baker Mayfield to have a chance at this award. Baker Mayfield has to limit his turnovers and negative plays. And I will say I'm already bought in on Baker Mayfield with the Bucs, right? I think he's done a really good job, in Tampa Bay. You don't stumble into 40 touchdowns by accident. He's played some really good football. He throws a lot of picks, and he fumbles the football a lot. And I think some Bucs fans downplay that aspect of him sometimes, basically saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. He only lost a few of them. You'll throw picks when you're throwing that much." But he has to limit it, and it does affect games. It does, when Baker's shaky, when his footwork starts to get a little jumpy, that can affect games over a period of time. And we've seen it happen in certain areas, like that Carolina Panthers game where the Buccaneers ended up winning off of a Chuba Hubbard fumble forced by Anthony Nelson. Really great play with the defense, but it changed the game. But that game, that's not a win if that doesn't happen. And Baker Mayfield had a really shaky game that game, right? So those type of things he needs to cut down on. And not to say that he's not playing really good football outside of that, because he is. And there's plenty of quarterbacks in the league that he's better than, and you could argue he's been a top 10 quarterback in the league, towards the outside of the top 10. But he needs to fix those. And we've said that, I think, a lot, and it hasn't happened sometimes. So I think, next year will be a big year for that, limiting your fumbles, limiting your negative plays. Even if you hop on the football after you fumble it, you still could be losing yards, or you could be gaining no yards and you've wasted it down. It's not just about a matter of recoveries. It's about a matter of, did he lose this many? You just need to stop generating those type of plays. And if he can do that, and he doesn't have to throw 41 touchdowns again, if he can throw 35 and throw like 7 picks, then he'll be cooking, right? Yeah. So I think that type of season is a season I'd like to see from Baker Mayfield, or the 41. I'll take the 41 touchdowns too. But those are MVP numbers. being able to put up high numbers and take care of the ball and limit the amount of negative plays you make. And I think that's an area Baker Mayfield needs to address. And it's one of the few areas he needs to address because I think Grizzard and Cohen really knew how to use him. They know what throws he can make. They know what throws he cannot make. He's able to be mobile and run. So he can pick up yards with his legs as well. I think they want to limit that sort of thing next year. It seems like they don't want him to take as many hits, but that's the formula for an MVP season. The Bucs defense needs to be good. The team needs to be, as a whole, really good. And Baker Mayfield needs to stop limiting his negative plays and then just go out and ball otherwise, like he does. Finding Mike Evans, finding Chris Godwin, making really great throws, being elusive in the pocket. Those are all things he's been able to do. So just keep doing that. Limit the negative stuff. Astounding analysis here at Bucs Game Day. And you'll be good, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I'd say.
Yeah, pretty shut and dry, really. It's cutting down on the turnovers. If the Bucs can go out there once again, win the NFC South, which would go a long way in making his case, along with his stats, obviously. But cutting the turnovers is a huge part. I think I counted there was like 16 potential turnovers last year for him. Fumbles lost. Fumbles that he got back, but as you had mentioned, River, like loss of yards, lots of downs, not good. And then obviously the interceptions were a huge issue, and that's something he's going to have to cut down on if he wants to be the MVP. But everything's there for him too, right? Like he's got the offense in place. He's pretty much going to understand the offense fully, even though it's another new offensive coordinator for him. It's going to be very simple and very, similar to how Liam Cohen used to run his. So that's not going to be an issue. And then you still got the same playmakers on the outside and got two more new guys that are going to be able to add into that. So Baker, I think he's got all the tools. He's got everything at his disposal to be able to go out there and win. And if his team can help back him up, then you could see him there in the running. Yeah, he's not the Jaden Daniels. Yeah, he's not the Lamar Jacksons. He's not the Patrick Mahomes. He's not these guys that have become kind of the face of an NFL quarterback in the league, but he's still that guy, right? Like Baker is still that guy, and he's still got the moxie to be able to carry himself as an NFL MVP. But it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But as we continue to get into things here, River, we're going to jump into OTAs. But for you guys listening on Facebook or on X, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, click the like button. We're trying to reach 50 likes on today's episode. That way we can get all this out, all this information out to you guys as best as we possibly can. Continue building, continue putting together more shows. If you're on YouTube already and aren't subscribed, please subscribe. If you aren't on YouTube, head over to YouTube, create an account if you haven't already. Type in BucsGameday.com in the search bar. Click the like button. If you are interested in any of our content, you can view it there, whether it's live. You can head over to BucsGameday.com, check out all of our written content. But here, we're doing it live. We're doing it streaming. We're doing it digitally. And we really appreciate all the love and support that you guys send us. So head over to YouTube, check out our stuff, click that subscribe button, click that notification button so you are alerted every single time we go live or post a video. Yesterday, River and our founder, Logan Robinson, were at, OTA practice number 4 overall. They did a breakdown, a great breakdown, I might add, of what they were able to witness there on the day. And there's some big things that have come from it, River. You had talked about in your article on Bucs Game Day in particular, talking about what stood out to you on day 4, day 2 for the media being able to view. And one of the 3 main points here for you are rookie standing out, a veteran linebacker making a big play on the defensive side of the ball, and then a starter returning to practice. So you want to touch on those 3 and anything else that you were able to see?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 rookies ended up really standing out, and that was Tez Johnson, the wide receiver out of Oregon, who the Bucs drafted in the 7th round, and Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, who the Bucs drafted in the 2nd round. Benjamin Morrison, I'll start there because he had a hip surgery that was reportedly not really an injury. It was more of something, a condition that he was fixing, essentially a bilateral hip. And when we saw him at rookie minicamp, he was doing individual corner drills, but he was not participating in team drills. And now at OTAs, he not only is participating at team drills, really quick turnaround, he's making plays. He had a really good play. I believe this is Baker Mayfield throwing the ball. He threw it up to Emeka Egbuka, his first round pick there. Wide receiver out of Ohio State. Looked really good so far. But Emeka went to climb the ladder, and Benjamin Morrison climbed the ladder right up with him. They were multiple feet off the ground. And Emeka had it at the catch point, and then Benjamin just swatted it out right at the top, just textbook play. Went up and got it. Emeka landed and got the wind knocked out of him, so that was a little moment from the media there, but he ended up being fine. So great play from Benjamin Morrison there, and great to see him doing that so quickly after rookie minicamp, where he wasn't even in team drills, and now he's being very physical as much as you can be in shorts and t-shirts. So I think that's pretty encouraging. Tez Johnson worked really well with Kyle Trask, backup quarterback there from Florida. Go Gators. Kyle sometimes has some really good chemistry with certain players on the team, and it looks like he really likes Tez Johnson. And Tez ran a route on Tyke Smith, playing football out there, and he burned Tyke, hit kind of a crosser up into a post, and Trask hit him really nicely at the left side of the field. So offense went crazy on that one, as they do. They get really excited about the team drills. And he looked pretty good too. He had some other catches in space, some shorter routes, which I think they might kind of use packages for Tez in that instance to use screens, shorter routes, kind of get him in
his
space.
Speed is kind of really showing out there right now.
Yeah, and he didn't run a fast 40, but game speed's a different sort of metric. And it seems like Tez Johnson's game speed in pads is a lot quicker than perhaps it would be by any measurable unit like you'd have the NFL Combine, which is some wide receivers are like that. Cooper Kupp didn't have a very good combine speed wise, and then the Rams put a GPS tracker on him. Like, man, this guy's really fast. So he could be like that. I don't know how much usage he'll get in the offense, but if Josh Gazard likes him, you could find some packages in there. So he's been playing pretty well. Second point, I believe, was the player returning to practice or the interception. Interception. Deion Jones, who is with the Bucs for his second year, linebacker, had a really nice pick on Kyle Trask. He faced him. Kyle kind of threw it in a sea of red jerseys. That's the defense. And he tipped it, and he managed to do like a 360 in the air while tracking it with his eyes. It was very impressive, and he managed to come down with it on the other end. So it's cool to see veterans in that linebacker room performing like that. Deion Jones has some good hands. Bucs fans probably know that Deion Jones has some good hands based on how 2019 ended. But he's a Buc now. And defense loved it. We talked to SirVocea Dennis after OTAs. It's really cool to see a guy like that make a pick, make a play. And then Luke Reddick was injured or banged up or something on the first day of OTAs, day one. And he was off to the side working with a trainer. And he was not for day 4. He was out there doing drills. He seemed like he was back in a good capacity. And we talked to Todd Bowles on day 1. He said, anybody who's banged up, there's a few guys, will probably be ready for training camp. So that's good news that Reddick's going to work his way back in there.
Yeah, all sounds like positive news. Rookies performing well early is always good to hear. Luckily, the Emeka Egbuka thing is not.
Yeah. We asked him afterward. He said, I'm all good. But he went pretty high up in the air, and he took a hard landing, and he was down for a little bit. But I think he
don't want to immediately be without your first-round draft pick.
No, you don't. But he's okay, folks. He's okay.
He's okay. But, yeah, everything sounds good. Good to see that Luke's back. Probably was dealing with something minor, so good to see that. Some of the other guys are not there. We'll touch on that here in a little bit as well. But if you guys have any questions or comments regarding what is happening on OTA that you want us to touch on, feel free to throw those in the comments on YouTube as well. That's how we're able to get to them. We'll bring them up on screen and be able to address those as we continue to talk through this. But a couple of things that had, kind of bogged my mind down a little bit or kind of drew my attention. Todd Bowles, you had spoke about Deion Jones for his interception that he was able to make there in OTAs. Inside linebacker, obviously. And that brings me to this point. Todd Bowles had mentioned there's a question posed, like, where is he happy with, depth on both sides of the ball? And it was very interesting. Obviously, wide receiver, or he talked about the offense as wide receivers and running backs being the deepest. And then on this, in the defensive side of the ball, he mentioned the secondary. But right before that, he had said that he's very pleased with the depth of the inside linebacker group. I'm not so sure how much I agree with him on that. But I'll let you kind of dive into it because we do know SirVocea and Levante are kind of going to be heading those two spots. But after them, it gets a little bit dicey, right? You've got Anthony
Yeah.
Walker, the aforementioned Deion Jones, Antonio Greer, and then 2 undrafted free agents in Nick Jackson and John Bullock. So it doesn't seem all that deep to me. It was an interesting comment made by Todd Bowles, and probably a lot of media faces were like, okay, like interesting take, interesting point. But your thoughts on that, and where do you see it, and where do you think Todd Bowles is looking at?
Well, you kind of got to be outwardly confident about it, right? And we talked about this, but it really comes down to SirVocea Dennis, right? And how much do you believe in SirVocea Dennis? And clearly, this team does. Now, I don't know how many better options there were out there for them that weren't going to be really expensive in free agency. Right. The draft was pretty weak on inside linebacker. You didn't want to reach for one in the first round. I believe Vic Fangio, actually defensive coordinator for the Eagles, of course, said in a press conference that Jihad Campbell will be out until August. So I don't know if they want to deal with that. A lot of Bucs fans think this is a sure thing. They think, oh, SirVocea played well when he was healthy. If he's healthy, then he'll play well. And he's got a lot of limited playing time, right? And he's shown some flashes in that limited playing time he's had. He was mostly a passing down guy, even when he played against the Washington Commanders in week 1. You know, Britt took the first 2 downs, and then SirVocea Dennis coming on the passing down for coverage. But he needs to be able to play multiple downs. He needs to be able to stop the run as well as stop the pass, which he's been good at, especially in college. His coverage skills have looked good in the NFL in the limited time they've been in. But you just got to take the room, and you got to really believe that this guy is your guy. And I think there's a path where that works out for sure, because we've seen some flashes with SirVocea Dennis, but we need to see him do that consistently without getting hurt over multiple weeks. It's not just the injuries thing. It's, can he play that way for 17, 18 weeks instead of playing for just a few games? So I think that's really what it comes down to. If SirVocea Dennis can stay healthy and he can play pretty decent, then you're pretty good at the top end with Lavonte David. But Lavonte David is getting older. His football IQ is still just off the charts, and he still is really good in the blitz. He can identify plays and get to them, especially screens and runs. He can really attack. His coverage skills aren't quite there anymore because he's just slowed down a few steps, right? So you're going to need a guy like SirVocea Dennis to really pick up the slack there, and he needs to be able to do that for every game. Right. So that's what I'm curious about. Because you got guys like Anthony Walker, walked out there and looked at him, and he was pretty slim, I thought. So I don't know how many running downs he'll be in on. So that could be a supplementary thing for passing downs. And his coverage, debatedly was either good or bad last year, depending on who you ask. But
the coaching staff seems very high on him as well.
Oh yeah, they are, and he's veteran, and he's he's good with Lavonte David. They're both from South Florida, so there's a big connection there. And he could teach a guy like SirVocea Dennis what he knows about coverage, because even if your physical aspect isn't there, then your mental aspect, your IQ, guys like Anthony Walker, guys like Lavonte David, those are great guys to learn from. So I think there's a potential that this room is fine, but it's not very deep. And if there's an injury to SirVocea Dennis, who is injury prone, and there's an injury to Lavonte David, who's getting quite old, both those things are a possibility, right? So you're muted, Caleb.
This is twice in 2 shows, guys. I apologize.
Should we kick Caleb off the show? Let us know in the comments.
I'm supposed to be improving, and I'm just getting worse. Oh my god, that's terrible. But now I totally forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, that's
SirVocea Dennis, Lavonte David.
I totally blanked on that. So continue,
guys. We're kicking David. We're kicking Caleb off the show. It's official. He's gone. No, it's just you really got to have faith in these guys. And I think the coaching staff does. I think Todd Bowles does. I think it's not all coach speak, but it's a thin room. And if anything bad happens and it's football, then it's not going to work out. So I don't know if they're going to pick up a veteran. I don't know if they're going to pick up another, they've got a UDFA and Nick Jackson from Iowa, who I think has played the most ever college football games. So that's kind of impressive. But really, you just got to hope that those 2 linebackers, SirVocea Dennis, Lavonte David, they can stay healthy, they can play good football, and you don't have to necessarily see the other players like Deion Jones or Anthony Walker unless you really need them in there. So,
right.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think SirVocea Dennis is the biggest question mark, and I'm excited to see what he can do in training camp, especially when they put the pads on and start hitting.
Yeah, and the importance of SirVocea staying healthy cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
You can't overstate how important it is for him to stay healthy because, I mean, coming out of college, he was more of that guy, streamline, kind of tackling, getting in the backfield, and
Sure.
coverage wasn't necessarily a strong suit, but he was decent at it. And once you saw him reach the NFL level in the sparing moments that we have been able to see him, he's excelled in coverage. He's excelled at, attacking backs when they're, running towards the sideline or whatever it may be. And, you talked about the Washington Commanders game. He had a sack in that game and like 10 tackles or something like that. And everybody started to blow him up. So the importance of him staying healthy cannot be overstated. It is huge for the Buccaneers defense as a whole. And it's also huge for, everything not starting to snowball, right? Like if he goes down, then, you're asking more of these other players, and what happens if one of them go down, and then it just creates this, cause and effect.
It does. And that's the first step, like I've been mentioning. That's step one, is that he has to stay healthy. Step two is that he has to consistently play good football. Right. We haven't been able to see him do that because he has not done step one. So it's kind of a catch-22 there, but coaching staff likes him. Whenever we see him in practice, he looks like he's moving really good instincts, great sideline guy. So it's all there, and whether it comes together remains to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a question here from one of our regular viewers on YouTube, Christopher Cole, asking, how's Grizzly's offense coming along? And for those who don't know who he's referring to when he's saying Grizzly, he's speaking of Buccaneers' new offensive coordinator, Josh Grizzard. So touch on that a little bit for us if you can, River.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching, Christopher. It's pretty early, and he's not doing any crazy stuff. In fact, on OTAs day one, everything was scripted. So he was not actually calling plays. Everything was pre-scripted there. Todd Bowles did say there was a little bit of a call-it period with Grizzard on OTAs day 4, and what that means is he's allowed to call plays essentially to Baker Mayfield, and there's a little bit of that, but we'll see that ramp up as we get through mandatory minicamp and then into training camp. And as we get into training camp, we'll probably see a little bit more of the motions, a little bit more of the complex sort of plays that Grizzard wants to run. Right now, he wants to get the rookies acclimated. He wants to get the guys in shape. He wants to get those football fundamentals down. And that's what a lot of those coaches are doing on both sides of the ball, right? Defensive coaches, offensive coaches, they're just trying to get the basics down. So nothing too crazy coming from Josh Grizzard's offense. We talked to Kate Otten after OTAs yesterday on Tuesday, and he another guy that just raved about how well he prepares the offense, what he knows. The terminology is very similar, so it's easy to pick up if you're an offensive player. The whole offense is returning as well. So, guys like Bucca and Taz Johnson got to learn it, but everyone else, they're on the same page already. And there's a few wrinkles, that are going to be in there from Grizzard's time in Miami. He's worked on a lot of different guys. So he'll take that Liam Cohen offense and the best of that Liam Cohen did, and he'll apply his own little flair to it. And he's going to need to be able to call the plays in a way that Liam Cohen did, to where you can put your team in the best position to score points in the football game. So hard to tell right now early, but players continue to rave about it. And I think because it's kind of similar to Liam Cohen's scheme, the terminology is going to be very similar. These guys will pick up on it pretty quick.
Yeah, I heard something. It might have been coming out of Jacksonville's camp or whatever. But they were talking about Liam Cohen and how he just knows when to call the right plays at the right time, and he gets excited about it. And
absolutely, yeah.
If that's probably what made Liam so successful, or what has made Liam so successful, is that he knows at exact time, what moment to call the exact play that's gonna, tilt the odds of success in a play in his favor. And if Grizzard can, have that same effectiveness, which it seemed that he did, considering what he was able to do on the Bucs third down offense last year.
Right, which Kate Otten mentioned constantly as well. That was a huge thing for us, and he did really well there. Yeah.
So hopefully that is something that is maintaining, as we continue through the rest of OTAs this week, heading into mandatory minicamp, and then later in the summer into training camp. So thanks, Christopher, for throwing out that question. Very insightful there, because we did have some knowledge coming from yesterday's practice on that. But here to cap off, our OTA talk here. Well, not completely, but the undrafted free agents, always interesting to see who's kind of making noise. Who do we see making the 53-man, or who do we see doing whatever in what capacity for the Buccaneers? Got some big names, Shilo Sanders, Desmond Watson. What are those two guys looking like right now? I know Shiloh's getting the rookies out, and he's been visiting, went and ate at the Pearl, went and saw Desi Banks. Over Ebor.
He's really engrossed in the Tampa experience.
Really, really doing it. I know people love to hear about Shilo, Desmond Watson as well. So just give us a few updates on those guys. I know Antoine Winfield Jr. had some nice things to say as well. But yeah, let us know, River.
Yeah, Desmond Watson, it's tough. I'll probably say this every week. Without pads on it, it's hard to tell how a defensive lineman really does because there's so little they can do really to in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s. Well, they're not in on 7-on-7s. So there's nothing they can do there. In 11-on-11s, they can't really hit or break the line or do their moves. So Todd Bowles said he's coming along. They're on a program with him. He's got to build up his stamina to be able to play more than a few downs at a time at the NFL level. So that's going to be his biggest focus going into training camp. Shilo was a part of a pass breakup on the right side of the field. We couldn't exactly see what happened because the players were blocking us. But Tyke Smith and Shilo Sanders were both involved in the play. And that ended up being a PBU that the defense was cheering on. And then talked to Antoine Winfield Jr. He was asked about Shilo Sanders. First of all, when Antoine came to the podium, Shilo shouted, "Make sure you tell them that I'm your favorite rookie." So I kicked off the press conference with saying, "Who's your favorite rookie?" And Antoine said, "Oh, easy, Shilo Sanders."
His fashion.
And yes, of course. No, but he said, he works hard. He came here to work hard. He came here. He plays hard. He plays aggressively. And he said, I have a really not as well known as Deion Sanders, but I have a notable dad who played in the NFL. Antoine Winfield, cornerback, played in the NFL for 14 seasons, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time second team All Pro, really good career. So he says, I get it. I know how it is playing with the NFL dad. And he said, I couldn't say enough about him, about how he's working, how he's playing really aggressively in the right way, despite all that. So a lot of really good things to hear from Antoine Winfield Jr. about Shilo Sanders, who still has a pretty long way to climb, I think, to make this roster in any capacity. But he seems to be impressing everyone that he comes into contact with, which is pretty nice to see there. And we'll see how he progresses throughout mandatory minicamp and training camp.
Yeah, I think his personality absolutely helps him. Like, he's not arrogant. He's not, thinking he's better just because of where he comes from and, his name alone. Yeah. And it seems like he's meshing very well, not only amongst the rookies, but along the vets, kind of allowing himself to kind of acclimate into what the Buccaneers do already. And that's great to see. Matt D, I see your question here in a second, but we've got one more update from OTAs before we get to your question. So hold with us. River, we've got an update on Haason Reddick. What's the update?
The update is that he's still not there. But talk to Todd Bowles about it. Haason Reddick's still not at OTAs, but he posted on his Instagram that he was working out. So he's definitely still getting in the work. We don't know where exactly that is, but he posted that he was doing some drills with some guys on his own time. And Todd Bowles mentioned that I do communicate with him through Reddick's position coach. So there is at least some communication going on there, which leads me to believe that it's not a Randy Gregory situation where there was no communication going on whatsoever. So when they asked, hey, is he going to be at mandatory minicamp? His very easy answer was, it's mandatory. So he will have to show up there or be fined. I would expect Haason Reddick to show up, given that new information we got on Tuesday. But you never know. So excited to see what happens. Yeah.
Todd Bowles.
It's mandatory. It's mandatory. Yeah. It's in the word.
It's just as much as you're going to get from him too. He doesn't like to talk about those sorts of things, and it's pretty obvious. He makes it known that he doesn't want to talk about it, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And everybody's going crazy. Oh my gosh, we have another Randy Gregory situation.
You just got to show up. You just got to show up.
Yeah, he's going to show up. It appears that he is going to show up. He is working out, and based on what I could see from his story on Instagram, it kind of does look like he's training in the state of Florida. from just looking at, the trees, what the weather was looking like, things of that nature. So it does appear that he is gearing up to be ready for minicamp and then training camp later in the summer as well. So just ride along with us as we continue to cover that situation. Hopefully it doesn't turn into the worst possible thing that could happen, which is obviously him deciding not to show up in mandatory minicamp and, things going sideways there. But we'll go over to Matt D's question here before we, end the show with another segment. Matt D on YouTube, first time catching the show live. Love the coverage. We appreciate you tuning in, Matt. We really do. It helps us. If you guys are tuned in, smash that like button, guys. That's how we are able to continue to get all this great coverage out to you. And we really do appreciate the love that you guys show us each and every week. And even more so if we come on here more than once. So really do appreciate your guys' views. Matt's question is the Trey Palmer trade buzz talk real? Do we know?
We don't explicitly know, but I think it makes sense, if that makes sense.
You can kind of read between the lines or infer.
Right, yeah. So you have a pretty stacked wide receiver room, right? You've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson now as well. That's 5 already that I've named. And then if you want to carry 6, you could go with Trey Palmer, but you need to have special teams value there. Trey Palmer used to return kicks. I don't think they loved the way he did that. So Tez Johnson's probably going to step into that role as a kick returner if forecasts are correct. And if Tez Johnson does that, then Trey Palmer doesn't really fit in the wide receiver room as a special teams guy, and he's not going to get a lot of playing time necessarily as well. So if the Bucs are able to trade him, they'd want to get like a 7th or like anything out of him, right? Like a 6th or 7th. If you can do that, talking to Fox Sports' Greg Allman, of course, Bucs fans know Greg Allman, fantastic beat writer for the Bucs for many years. He kind of phrased it as your 54th player for my 54th player is another possible thing as well. It's guys that can't quite make the roster there, but still have some value to other teams. They would probably love to get something from him, but I would not anticipate him having a place on the team as it stands right now. They got a lot of other guys in front of him. The wide receiver room is pretty loaded. He hasn't been able to really come onto the scene like they'd like him to since he got drafted. So I think they'll either try and trade him or perhaps release him, but I would be surprised if he ended up on the roster. But you never know. They might find another special teams usage for him. He caught a touchdown in red zone work on Tuesday, so that's good for him as well. But really, really crowded room, really tough to crack right now, and I think they might try and get something from him. So it wouldn't surprise me if anything like that was happening.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense for both sides, right? Like the Bucs have a deep wide receiver room. You drafted Trey Palmer 6th overall with, kind of betting on the potential or the ceiling that he might possibly have and being able to develop. And now your wide receiver room super deep. Back then when you drafted him, it wasn't as deep, so you kind of needed help no matter what. And he was able to come in and he was okay. He was good. He had a big catch and big game for a touchdown, which was huge. And the Steelers, from their side of things, they need help at wide receiver.
They do. I
think their number 3 wide receiver is right now like Scotty Miller or somebody like that.
Yeah, that's not great for the folks.
Their wide receiver 2 is Calvin Austin III, and obviously DK, and then they traded away George Pickens. So they're really hungry for wide receivers.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trey Palmer will necessarily move the needle a lot for them.
No, but it might be a little better than Scotty Miller. Granted, Scotty Miller and Trey Palmer are kind of similar players. So ideally you would want Trey Palmer to be a go guy who can get separation, but for some reason he hasn't really been able to get separation on a lot of his routes. So that's been another big problem that he's had. And that speed is very nice, but getting off your guy is how you had to use that speed. He's had some trouble with that. So they got him. They got Cam Johnson. I don't know if Cam Johnson's going to make it either.
Oh, this is the next question here that I was going to bring up.
I don't know if Cam Johnson's going to make it either because Tez Johnson can really do a lot of the things I think they want Cam Johnson to be able to do, if that makes sense. And Sterling Shepard makes things interesting because if he's on the roster as a wide receiver on the 53, he's not playing special teams at his age. That's not happening. So now you've got a guy who's like your 5th wide receiver who's not playing any special teams before the fifth wide receiver, and he's not going to do teams. So that means, well, how do you compensate for that? Do you have to get more defensive backs who have value there? And how do you kind of structure the roster that way? So that's a question to ask. And that's kind of also why this whole wide receiver thing gets thrown into a flux, because if you've got Sterling Shepard there taking up a spot, if you're going to carry 6, you would like it to be a guy who can really contribute on special teams, if possible. And if not, then you got to find that elsewhere. So I think with the arrival of Tez Johnson, Cam Johnson's spot is up for contention. And I'm not going to say that Tez has automatically beaten him there. But I think definitely that's going to be a competition. And I'd favor Tez Johnson solely because he has the ability to return kicks. So that's pretty valuable, I think. Yeah. And that's something that, they can try. They have tried Cameron Johnson, right? He's been doing drills like that. But it's going to be a tough competition there. And as far as offensive prowess goes, I think Tez kind of does that same thing. So we'll see what happens. But I would anticipate them keeping, around that 5-6 mark.
It's just insane how quickly this wide receiver room went from very
yes, and also thank you to Low Country Pirate there. Rakim Jarrett is there as well. So really, really tough room to crack. Jarrett's made some plays during practices and camps we've seen all the time. Talented guy. That's another guy. He probably has special teams value as well. So if you want to keep 6, maybe he's the guy you keep at 6, and then Palmer and Johnson are out. So it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough sledding for these guys. You go down the list: Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Buka, Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan.
Hey man, I think Ryan Miller caught against the Kansas City Chiefs, caught the potential that touchdown towards the end there. So they've got some guys.
You keep going. It's like, okay, well, where does it stop? Like,
right?
They contributed in some sort of fashion. Obviously, not world beaters when it comes to their position or their jobs. But
in theory, you could put Sterling Shepard on the practice squad again, but then he would only have 3 games, right? So with the understanding, kind of like, oh, if something happened, then there's that. But
yeah, that's where I kind of see like a guy like a Cameron Johnson or a Rakim Jarrett kind of falling. Is kind of in that window of things and kind of emergency guys, because at this point it would have to take something super serious for which, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But that's what the case would be. But luckily for the Bucs, it's a good problem to have. And another good problem to have is that they've got a lot of underrated players all over the field, right? And you talk about the Levante Davids, whether it's K-Dot at tight end, Baker Mayfield even at the quarterback position, Mike Evans, obviously one of the most underrated wide receivers in NFL history, despite the work and the stats that he's been able to put up. So leads me to my next thing here, River. What is the Buccaneers' most underrated position group that is going to be key for them in this upcoming 2025 season?
Ooh, that's a good question, actually. It might be defensive line, and I think because we know that we have Vita Vea and we have Kalijah Cansey there, but then you got Logan Hall. Then you've got Greg Gaines, who's going to be back in that instance. You've got Elijah Roberts, the team just drafted. So they added another player into that room rotationally. So if you can keep that room deep, ask the Philadelphia Eagles how that works, right? A really deep rotation there can be really strong and can be nightmares for opposing defenses. So I don't know if that's it's actually, I would have to say it's not that deep. But it has a potential to have a lot of really strong players rotate in and out. And if Elijah Roberts can play a really good role, kind of like William Golston did, who I don't anticipate coming back this year, then you could really make something happen there. So maybe underrated in that we know how top heavy it is, but maybe the depth could bring out the best in that rotational unit. So that would probably be my answer. How about yourself, Caleb? What would your answer?
Yeah, I like the defensive line pick. I
thank you.
That's the first one that everybody points to because nobody talks about them. Nobody talks about the big nasties on the defensive line, but yet Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea led the team in sacks last year, and the national media pundits don't really give them a lot of love for it. It's all about these edge rushers, this and that. So I do like the pick. But I'm going to go over to the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go to tight end. I think when Cade Otton was out of the lineup, it was kind of like, dude, we're missing that piece, right? Like, where is that guy over the middle, or a guy who can make tough catches over the middle? And with Cade being fully 100% healthy again, especially after taking the beating he took at the whole second half of last season, just felt like every game he was taking shots. He's going to be good again. We know he's going to be good. And then you add in, I think it was Payne Durham and Devin Culp. I am so high on Devin Culp. I love it. I just love it, dude. I think he's one of my favorite players on the Bucs that doesn't get talked about because he doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. But when he made the most out of it last year, whenever he was getting on the field, he was making catches. He wasn't having drops, which was a big problem of his going back to his time in Washington, and obviously a pure pass catching type guy.
Also a bit of a problem with Cade Otton sometimes as well. So
exactly.
Tighten up.
And so I think that's kind of a thing. Is Culp going to kind of challenge Payne Durham for that number 2 spot? I don't necessarily think challenging, but I do think he'll kind of take away some of those pass catching plays there away from Payne, because Payne is a better blocking tight end more so than Devin Culp. So I think that group as a whole looks really good. Obviously, we know Keith, he's a great special teams guy, so he's going to be with the team anyways, and a hell of a blocker as well. So I think those guys there in the tight end room are going to be very key for the Buccaneers here in 2025, especially if they're wanting to keep that offense moving and humming the way that they did last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because Otton was a big contributor whenever the wide receivers went down, like you mentioned. And then Payne Durham has shown some flashes as well. And then Culp is more of that tweener, sort of more wide receiver style tight end that you have. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see what Josh Grizzard can do with a guy like that. I'm interested to see if he has any plans for him, if there's a way that he'd like to use him, because we know what personnel Liam Cohen liked to use, but Josh Grizzard's a whole different guy. So curious to see if he maybe mixes up the tight end room a little bit and gives us some fun looks, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a ton more stuff coming for you guys. That is going to wrap up this episode. We got a ton of stuff coming for you guys. The rest of OTAs finishing out this week. We'll see if we'll run a show in between now and next week's show. Mandatory minicamp is starting next week, so be on the lookout for the Haason Reddick update, guys, because it is going to be coming in hot and heavy.
It's going to be coming. Yes.
Whatever
is
happens.
He there? Is he not there? We'll let you know.
We will let you know. So make BucsGameday.com your one place to go to for all of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers needs. Head over to BucsGameday.com. Check out our written digital content there. Check out the rest of our videos here on YouTube. If you are watching with us anywhere other than YouTube, head over to YouTube. Type in BucsGameday in that search bar. Go ahead and like our videos. That's how we are able to get out all the stuff to you guys. Comment when we're live. Send us your questions while we're live. We love to get to those. It adds a little bit more fluff to our show. It allows us to get a little bit more in depth on things that we might not be even thinking about ourselves. So we truly appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Really, really important, guys, as well as that subscribe button. It's huge for us being able to get this content out to you guys front and center. We want it to be able, as soon as you turn on your YouTube, to see our faces, our beautiful faces, mine and Rivers. As always, guys, we appreciate you tuning in to Hear the Cannons presented by BucsGameday. And with that being said, River,